What's up, everybody, and welcome back to part 5 of the bobber series. So quick recap, we have done the fender delete, we've done the exhaust, we have done the license plate mount, we have done the tail light, we have done the levers. So at this point, we are now going to try putting on Joker Machine bar and mirrors with Motogadget bar and blinkers. Now, before I proceed, I highly recommend Joker Machine. It is a great company and they're fantastic. However, you should not have any expectation that one manufacturer will work well with another manufacturer, as they are not the same company and they do not share a parent company. Motogadget intends on making bar end blinkers that work on your bar ends, but not with mirrors. And Joker Machine makes bar end mirrors that are not intended to work with bar end blinkers. So today, I'm going to show you how to make the two of them work together. However, this requires a modicum of skill. So first things first, we need to drill a hole in the bottom of the handlebars. Now, camera's going to zoom in. If I drill a hole right approximately here, what's going to happen is the wires are going to come out awkwardly. They're not going to match up with the wires hidden down here, and you're always going to be drawn to the tension of it. So my suggestion is to drill a hole in the bottom of your handlebars so that you can do a nice wire tuck. We like doing things clean here at Street Pilots. Now, people have concerns about removing their handlebars because A, whether they're going to shift, are they going to return them to the same position, what are they going to do? So let me show you. Grab a pencil, Sharpie, pen, whatever works, and what you're going to do is you're going to create crosshairs. First, you can line a mark on the outside of your speedometer clamp to your upper tree clamp right here, and your handlebars, knowing how far right or left your handlebar sat by having a line here. So let's do that first. Now, we are going to do the exactly same thing, except we're going to do a vertical line because that is going to be our rotation forwards and backwards to realign these to the same position for the client. So let's do that next. We have our mark. Now, also, if you are OCD like me and you want this hole out here drilled out in the center, you can mark off the other side equally to how you marked off this side of the handlebars and take a measurement between the two, find the center, and now you have your center hole where you can drill out a hole for your wiring. Let's do that next. Alrighty. Now, with everything marked off, you know where you're going to return to. So now it is more safe to take things off and realign them back when you need to finish the job. So now that everything is marked off, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the speedometer off of the bike to loosen up the handlebars so I can rotate them and drill. And we're going to do that by removing the 4 number 6 Allen bolts. Let's do that next. So for the next portion, when you're going to be set up to drill, you don't necessarily need to remove the speedometer. You can just loosen the 4 number 6 Allen bolts. Give it a little love tap, like so. Make your handlebars free, and now you can rotate your handlebars to have access to the bottom of them so you can drill it. The only concern here is make sure that none of your cables are snagged up or going to break from you rotating them. So pay attention to that. Do that next. Now that you have rotated your handlebars, the next point is if you are a good driller and you can freehand it, by all means go ahead. But if not, my suggestion is that you can retighten down your speedometer, clamping your handlebars in their new position to hold them steady for when you drill. So let's clamp them down. Now that you have rotated, retighten your handlebars into the new position, let's mark off where you're going to drill. So I'm drilling right at the bottom, but if you're concerned, always go further back because as per your rotation, you're going to be able to hide it. Obviously, if you go too far back, you won't have an awkward kink with your wiring, so use some common sense. But over here, if the camera can see that, we are now marked off at approximately the center right here, and this is where we're going to drill. Now, that everything is set up where it's going to be, how do you drill into round stock without having the drill bit go everywhere? So some of you, again, might be really good, might be very competent, and you can drill right through without having the drill bit skip everywhere. But in the case that you are not, I'm going to show you the trick. Center punch, give it a little tap, and have a center punch hole. What if I don't have a center punch and I don't want to go buy a center punch? Use a nail, use anything sharp to start your first portion of where you're going to drill. So I'm going to use a nail. With your center punch hole marked off, now we can proceed to drill. Always start with the lower drill bit and work your way up to a drill bit that you're going to use for this portion. Now, here is kind of a tricky situation. The skinnier hole you drill, the more hidden it will be. However, it will be more of a pain in the ass to fish your wires in the next step. The bigger hole you'll drill, the easier it is to fish the wires, but the higher chance of making it more noticeable. I.e., therefore, use common sense and drill it to a size that you're comfortable with for fishing out the wires, because that step is AIDS. With your handlebars center punched and your first primary hole drilled, just step it up until you get to a happy size. We are going to go work our way up to an 1/8, and if we're happy there, we might stop there with an 1/8. If not, we're going to go all the way to up to a 3/16. So let's see how it goes. Also, please wear your PPE, personal protective equipment, because I've been doing this for a long time, but I do not want to give you a bad example. So do as I say, not as I do, and the safety squint is not a good idea. 1/4 looks pretty good. It's quite a big hole. However, when you're done, don't forget to use a deburring tool to make sure that the edges are not sharp, as that will be very easy to lacerate your wires and short out your system if it snags on this sharp edge. Now that everything is drilled and prepped, we are entering the most fun portion of this install, also known as the gonoherpesiphilates. So what you're going to do is you're going to get a wire that is flexible enough to run through your handlebars. However, it has to be rigid enough so it doesn't hit the first obstacle and fold on itself. You need to pass it through either from the handlebar end and feed it out this little tiny hole, or you need to pass it through the little tiny hole and feed it out your bar end. As you pass it through, you're going to get it out. Then you're going to take your Motogadget bar and blinker setup. You're going to attach the wires to this end of it, and then you're going to pull your wire back through to your exit hole. So wish me luck. You're probably not going to see it because there's going to be a lot of cursing, but we're going to try to film it and do it in one straight go. So in this particular case, it's actually easier for me to get it in from the outside into here. So wish me luck, because just because we're nice, we have to do it twice. So we're back here, still on attempt number 1. And we are going to try using some tweezers to fish it out of the hole. And I have to step up the hole up to now 5/16 because, well, it's becoming a pain in the butt to try to fish out this wire. So let's go again.
Yeah. Round of applause.
So note to self, next time, use a shorter fucking cable.
Oh shit, we can cut it. We can cut it. You know what's satisfying? Watching you struggle.
You know what's satisfying? Being able to do this job.
I could do it.
Really.
I think so.
We're going to address what you did here in a minute.
What did I do?
She doesn't even know how bad she did a job.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So now, with your wire fed through and your end stuck out, the next portion is you're going to attach these wires to the end, and then by pulling it through, have these wires come out over here so we can continue with the wiring. That part is pretty self-explanatory. However, as I wanted to address from an earlier point, is the Motogadget Blinkers and the Joker Machine mirrors, 2 different companies. They don't necessarily work with each other because they don't possibly even know that the other company exists. So if the camera zooms in, so the first point is you can either get custom sleeves made, or you could have Joker Machine send you their inserts for their mirrors, and they will potentially work with these Motogadget bar end blinkers. The problem you're going to run into with the Joker Machine mirrors is that you have a big hole intended for their spacer. The Motogadget bar end blinker has a stud, so if the stud goes inside of the hole, they won't hold to each other. So even if you tighten the blinker all the way into your handlebars, your mirror is going to rattle on it. So you need something which will have the inside diameter to grab this and the outside diameter to grab the inside of this. We reached out to Joker Machine and they said that their spacer will work. However, initially when we were trying to do this, the inside diameter was slightly too tight, and this would not fit. Even if you put the wires through, it just would not fit. So we had to take a drill bit and we had to bore it out. Now, what I would recommend is measuring the diameter of this stud and boring it out so that it is just enough for this to pass. While I was absent, the client decided to use a step-down drill, which looks like a Christmas tree and a cone. And that step-down drill progressively gets bigger. She did this. If the camera can zoom in, you will see that the step-down effect is there. Now, it's done not too bad. The only concern I have with this on hand is the fact that the Motogadget bar end blinker, which I won't feed right through, if you muck this up and you go too deep with the step down where it gets oversized, like over here, you might recreate the problem of it rattling. So you want to make sure that you're very safe and secure with this and that it has enough bite that this piece won't rattle on it, because even if you thread it all the way on, with this being too loose, you may have it sitting cockeyed or it may come loose over time. So make sure that you're boring it out at the size diameter of the stud. However, don't forget that near the top, you're going to have to bore it out slightly bigger to account for this portion of the Motogadget bar end blinker, if the camera can see it. So stud, and then the fatter portion near the end of the stem. Again, reach out to Joker Machine. They were able to provide these. If not, you can always get some from like a local machine shop or whatever you want. Now, this video might be a bit longer than like my average videos, but this is a more of a complex install. So now that we have this attached, we have to do the part where if you mess this part up, you have to refeed the cable and do this all over again. So the biggest thing you want to try to do, and even me, I've had to do this several times before, you want to make sure that these two pieces are as attached to each other as possible, so that as you pull the fat cable through, the skinny cable does not slip off it. If you have a less rigid cable, I usually try to make a hook out of it and tie a knot and then tape over the knot. But in this case, because the cable we're using is so rigid and fat, I'm just going to have to try to tape the piss out of it and slowly pull it through, hoping that it does not split while I'm pulling it through the handlebars. So I'm going to pause the video, set up my taping, and then I'm going to pull it through. All right, I got my tape set up. Wish me luck. Make sure that you have your, well, mirror oriented the way that you want it to, whether it's the wider side to the outside, wider side to the inside, based on how you want it. Make sure that everything is kind of pre-assembled here so that you don't pull it through and then realize that you have to pull it back out and do it all over again, because that's just going to suck. So let's try to pull it through. Biggest thing here is I actually did not show this. She has stock handlebars. The stock handlebars have a threaded insert already inside of the handlebar with a threading meant for the Motogadget bar end blinker. I think it's an M8 by 1.25. And therefore, it's a much skinnier hole to feed this through. If you have aftermarket handlebars, such as Dean Speed handlebars, they will be hollow, so this portion will be easier to feed through. However, you will need to use bar end expanders to expand inside of your handlebars as I've shown in my other videos. So let's feed this through. Because of the pinhole, make sure that you don't strip it off right as you're about to start, and make your life easier by going quite slowly and patiently. The other big thing, and this is my bone to pick with Motogadget, is the wiring that is used here is, I think, 22 gauge, maybe 24. It is super skinny. Therefore, if you cut or strip on anything, it is really easy to break this wiring, and it is very easy to end up having the power touch the ground and short and blow your fuses, or not function at all. So therefore be very gentle when running these Motogadget wires. And now start threading everything in by hand for now until we set it up the way that we want it. Ran the wires out, and now we have to do everything the same exact way on the other side. So the first side went nice. Second side, fucking titties. Jesus, fuck. Not a lot of fun. Cancerous AIDS, and we're about fucking 50% done. Chia. Slowly. Ta-da! Alrighty guys, so over here, as you guys can see, this is our exit hole. All of our wires are being fed throughout. Even if you use a deburring tool, there's a chance that the edge may be still sharp, and as you can see, this wire here is dental floss thin. So during vibration or anything, it could chafe and cut itself really easily. So we went and procured grommets, and we're going to put a grommet in here to protect the wire from chafing. So I recommend getting a grommet and putting it into the hole, which is the next thing we're going to do. With the grommet now installed, you have more protection for the wires. However, we have one more thing to address, is that even though you're tucking and hiding everything, the red and black wires are going to be really, really visible. So if you have, or you can procure some, get a little piece of shrink tube, feed it over the wires, and have it hide the wires so it looks matching with the rest of the wires down here. I will show you how it looks when it's done. The next portion is going to be removing the nacelle, all of it, and getting access to the blinker connectors that are behind the headlight. In certain models, there's a pouch over here that has a blinker connector access. However, in a lot of us, it is behind the headlight. So again, I am going to be now next removing the nacelle, removing the headlight, and wiring in these wires into the blinkers. So the next portion, as I mentioned, is removing the nacelle. This is a nacelle we found on eBay or on Amazon. It is a nacelle for the 60, and you can see that it's not a standardized Indian nacelle, as it has this groove for the cover screw for the Indian 60 style headlight that is located right here. However, it fits really nicely. To remove it, this one came with number 5 Allen bolts, and there's 3, 1, 2, and 1 on the inside, and 1, 2, and 1 on the inside, so 6 total, and we're going to remove those next. The next portion we're going to do is we're going to remove the headlight cover with the nacelle removed. And this is done so that we can have access to the connectors for your blinkers. So let's move this all off. There's going to be one big giant plug. Let's unplug that. There you go. And we have full access. All right. At this point, all the easier labor and just tedious mechanical labor is done. What is going to be next is doing electrical work. So I will talk it through, but we do have a full-on descriptive video on this. So please reference that. That will be attached in here. However, the next step is to wire this over to here, and I'll have some key points to address. So As I'm prepping through, I kind of did this off camera. Make sure that all your wires are nicely tucked. Make sure you're not tangling on top of other connections. Otherwise, it's going to be very visible, and then you won't have to redo it, cut wires, etc. Tuck your wires first. Shrink tube them so that everything's blacked out. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get everything set up for the next portion, which I'll show at the bench. All right, we're not at the bench just yet, but I'm showing you that this is the connector you're kind of looking for inside of either your headlight cover or inside of the little pouch on top. The Motogadget blinkers are pigtails. What does that mean? It means they have no connectors on the ends. How do you attach those to these? You have three options. Option A, source connectors, such as this, such as your factory connectors. Put them onto the Motogadget wires and make them plug and play. Option 2 is the one where I'm going to just cut the wire with the connector off of the factory turn signals, and then I'm going to splice it into the Motogadget ones, and then I'm going to put the Motogadget ones and make them plug and play into the stock wiring. Or option 3, you hardwire it right into the stock wiring. And the reason I brought that third option up, that's the option you don't do. The reason is that if you want things to go wrong, and they usually can go wrong, that's when you hardwire it to the bike side. It's harder to fix because this now goes into your bike wire harnesses and etc. And having to work with this connector, never chop this off. If you're going to do some kind of modification, do it on the removable part, because if you damage this is a couple $100. You damage that, you're probably out a lot more and a huge pain in the ass. So always, if you're going to be cheap and cut it off your factory side, the removable accessory part. Do not hardwire into your bike wiring harnesses unless you absolutely have to, which in this case you don't. But just remember, this is much cheaper than mucking with this. So at the bench, I'm going to show you what we're going to do. Alrighty, so we're at the bench, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these off. Now this again is pretty common sense. However, what I see with rookies, what they do is they're like, oh, I want to preserve just a connector, and they cut things right at the connector, which makes it a big pain in the butt. Cut it and leave yourself as much wire as you can, because if you make mistakes, you can trim it back. When people cut wires really snugly at the connector, it leaves no room for error. So without further ado, take your trusty cutters and done. You have now made a possibly spliceable wiring connector. Again, keep it far away, and then do the same thing on the other side. These can get tossed in the garbage. Now, if I was saving these, the logic is counter. Again, working with this little snub is a pain in the butt. If I left it halfway, I could have repaired it and repaired the other one later on, because now I have more room to work with. This, you don't want to have it if these are not going in the garbage. But in our case, junk. With the ends cut off, I also trimmed some of this sheathing back so I have good access to the wires, like so. Good access to the wires, like so. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to just strip these back. Now you have your two connectors that all you need to do is splice these into your Motogadget ones. So now the camera is going to pan back over to our wired and Motogadget ones, and I'm going to show you how to figure out how to splice these and how to actually physically do it. Alrighty, so you have everything kind of stripped, everything is assembled, and now you need to figure out what's power, what's ground. The easiest thing to do is power on the circuit that you're trying to figure out, either left or right, and you might have to switch it. Have your cutoff extension connected to it, and then probe it off using a multimeter and using a good point for a good known ground, and figure out which one of these is positive, which one is ground. And that will help you figure out which side is which, so you don't accidentally wire these crossed. It's not a big deal, just unplug them and switch them, not a big deal. However, this will just help you figure out what's power, what's ground. So we're going to do it, and then before I wire it up, I'm going to test it. So there we go. We're powering on the right side, like so. I don't know if you can see it in a mirror here in a second. And on this connector here. This from the Motogadget, red is positive, black is ground, and we're going to have red go to blue and black go to brown, and we have light. So for the right side, brown is ground and blue is positive. And then I will later confirm the left side. So we're back here. I've crimped on so far one connector. Now, I tried giving it the benefit of the doubt and using crimp connectors. Now, what I gotta say is the wiring coming off the Indian side is probably, let me see, it is approximately 16 gauge wiring. So acceptable, fairly small for us automotive guys, but on motorcycle 16 is good. This little wire cutter goes as small as 22 gauge, and my 22 does not even cut the sheathing on this wire. So it's beyond the 22, it's a 24 gauge, and like I said, it's dental floss thin. For how expensive these lights are, I'm a little bit disappointed in how wimpy the wiring is. But it is what it is. I'm not the manufacturer. I'm not going to say shit, but that's how it is. But what I wanted to point out is that using even these tiny crimp connectors, it doesn't work. These ones go as small as 22 gauge, and since this wire is below 22, being 24 or maybe 26, these ones will not really work. They're very easy to split. What happens is that if you tug on them, the Indian side is pretty good. It won't really pop out, but if you tug hard enough on the Motogadget side, there's a high chance it'll pop out, and you really have to crush this, which kind of damages the waterproofing, and it kind of looks like really bad. And tried doing another one, and the other one I had to crush it so hard that I just ended up cutting through it, and again, defeating the purpose of these. So, same as in my other video, not sponsored by these people, not anything. But what I gotta say, make your life simple. Get yourself some marine-style waterproof connectors. How these work is instead of having a hard metal portion in the middle that you have to crimp and crush it on top of your wires, this has solder in the middle of it. So what's cool about it is basically you're soldering your connector without having to have flux and solder and everything and multi-handed and then shrink tube it over top. It is all one piece. You heat this piece up, it will shrink over top. The red or different colors depending on the gauge size of this, we will make this water resistant, and the middle silver portion you see is actually solder that will melt within your wires, making it very hard to separate, but also making this a very good connection. So me, as a guy who tinkers with just about anything, this has become my favorite thing to use on projects as well as in the shop. So highly recommend marine waterproof connectors. So right now we have everything shrunk over, and I slid over the factory protective layer. Yes, we have excess. Now the question is going to be, oh my God, why did you leave excess? It doesn't look so pretty. The reason I'm leaving excess here in this particular case is that my client here, she is waiting for the Street Pilot's fork blinkers, which she wants to run in parallel to the Motogadget bar ends. So this is all going to be chopped out and rewired again with the fork blinkers. And I want to make sure that I have extra length for when I go to do that. So when that comes around, we're going to rejig it, and then we're going to do a final cut. Now, to make this clean, on the install again, even though it's temporary, what we're going to do is we're going to feed from the back the connectors so that they are now hidden inside of the headlight bezel. So let's do that next. Got the first one in, and what I want to double check is that I am connecting to the proper side. So when I press right, it is, after all, my right one that works. So let's test that now. Where's my key? There we go. And I'm flicking right. And right is the one that works. So now let's do the same thing for the left side. Let's make sure the left side works. Left side works. Now let's make sure that our hazards work. Hazards work. No hyper flash. Our tail light's working perfectly as well. All of our blinkers are on, and now it is time to reassemble, which I will guide you through next. First thing we're going to reinstall is going to be the headlight. Plug the puppy back in and let's go. Make sure that, especially with these 60s where you have 30 million things inside of the headlight housing, you're not going to pinch or crush anything while you are reinstalling the headlight. Now that the headlight and the headlight casing has been reinstalled, we're going to reinstall the nacelle. With the nacelle reinstalled, the blinkers installed, everything kind of taken care of, now it is time to re-secure our handlebars back to their proper position. First thing we're going to do is, using a number 6 Allen, we're going to loosen back our 4 speedometer bolts. Next thing we're going to do, give it a little tap. We're going to rotate the handlebars back to their normal position, making sure that all the wires are tucked and hidden out of the way as we were intending on. Next thing is we're going to ensure that we find our crosshairs and rotate back to them accordingly. That one's there, that one's there. And now we're going to secure this back down. Now remember that it was flush on the front. So first I'm going to bring them all a little bit snug. I'm going to then confirm that all my lines are still correct, which they are. And then I'm going to secure it down to make sure that it is equal pressure. We're going to go front, back, front, back. With everything tight, the last thing we have to worry about is ensuring that our mirrors are secured in the position that we want them. The issue some of you may find is that you are going to get wind, hit your mirror when you're riding, and push it loose. So, easiest thing to do in this particular case is we're going to tighten the piss out of these mirrors by hand, and then we're going to use a mechanical advantage by using the mirror arm to vise the Motogadget bar and blinker even tighter. Remember, Motogadget, the actual company logo, has to sit at the top, as they have 2 LEDs at the top and 1 at the bottom. So now we're going to go up until we feel that we're getting really, really tight. And then we're going to loosen, reposition our arm, and set it to where we want it to. And do the same thing on the other side. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now, let's make sure that nothing broke while we were tightening and adjusting things. Again, we're going to turn the bike back on, blind the camera, and ensure that our blinkers work, which they do. Next thing, ensure that when we move the throttle, we are not moving the mirror. So free movement. Perfect, perfect. And now it's going to be go side to side, making sure that your mirror is not smashing onto your tank to damage it. Clear and clear. And then lastly, we're going to hop on the bike and adjust it to our client who wants to remain off camera. Hey guys, and now with that, we have completed the Motogadget bar and blinker and Joker machine bar and mirror install. What a mouthful that was. And again, I'm going to test it. Clearing the tank. Everything is nice and tight. Everything is adjusted. We can see everything. So stay tuned, as the next video is going to be the 240 install, after which we still have a S&S intake coming, and we're going to show you how to install that. And then we're going to do an educational piece on tuning and showing what kind of power a Scout Bobber 60 can make. See you next time.